Good evening and welcome to another exciting episode of Movie NP Halloween Edition, the vlog where we review movies and analyze them for life hacks and success tips. Tonight's review and analysis is the 1966 The Ghost and Mr.Chicken. The film will be screened as part of Svengooly's Bonanza this Saturday, 8/7 Central. Don't miss it. Directed by Alan Rifkin, written by James Fritzell, Everett Greenbaum, and Andy Griffith. It stars Don Knotts, Joan Staley, Leon Redmond, and Dick Sargent of Bewitched fame. The film is 1 hour 30 minutes long, rated G, and carries an IMDb rating of 7.2 out of 10. It's available on DVD and Blu-ray from Amazon.com and streaming from Amazon Prime and Fandango at home/voodoo.com. The genre is a mystery, horror, comedy, and romance. The plot, spoiler alert here, folks, the film stars Don Knotts as Luther Heggs, a timid typesetter for the Rachel Courier Express who dreams of becoming a reporter, but no one takes him seriously. So he decides to solve a murder mystery and end up spending a horror-filled night in a haunted house. The film starts out immediately setting the stage where we are clear that Luther is a lovable loser. He drives a 1958 Edsel Corsair, which was a huge failure for Ford and is an inside joke that only a loser would drive a car like that. Luther then claims to witness a murder that ends up just being the town drunk who has been hit over the head by his angry wife. Luther is ridiculed by the paper's full-time reporter, Ollie Weaver. Interestingly enough, Luther also has a crush on Weaver's girlfriend, Alma Parker. Back at the paper, Luther is asked to provide a filler story for the paper. Mr. Kelsey, the janitor, encourages him to write about the old Simmons mansion, an infamous abandoned house in town where a murder mystery was committed years before. The story goes is that Ephraim Simmons murdered his wife with pruning shears before jumping out the third-story window of the Oregon loft and plummeting to his death. Since that day, it is said that on certain nights, the ghost of Mr. Simmons can be heard playing the organ at midnight. Also, the blood stains remain on the keys of the organ, and even Bonami was used in an attempt to remove them, but they cannot be removed. After reading the story and realizing that it's 20th anniversary of the murder-suicide, the editor tells Luther to go stay the night in the haunted house to bolster the story. Fearful to do so, he initially refuses, but is talked into doing it by his crush, Alma Parker, because she realizes that this may be his big shot to become a reporter. So reluctantly, Luther accepts and sneaks into the Simmons mansion that night. Luther eventually settles down in the parlor with his sleeping bag, but he is kept awake by spooky noises and laughter. Out of fear and in an attempt to silence the noises, he throws an old book at the bookshelf. This opens a hidden passage that leads to the organ loft. Luther notices it happens to be midnight, and right on cue, the blood-stained organ begins to play by itself. Luther bolts back down the stairs, only to find a portrait of Mrs. Simmons has been stabbed in the neck with a pair of pruning shears with blood gushing from the wound. Luther reports the events of the night in the paper, and he quickly becomes a local celebrity and hero. Alma even breaks up with Ollie and begins to date him. The nephew of the deceased couple, Nicholas Simmons, hears of the story and plans to have the house demolished. However, the banker will not sign off on the deal because his wife is into spiritualism and considers the house an important proof of supernatural and a local landmark. So Nicholas then decides to sue Luther for libel and discredit him. During the hearing, one of Luther's grade school teachers is called up to the stand as a character witness. She reports that Luther had a tendency to exaggerate as a boy and accuses him of making up the story to get a promotion. The townspeople, who have all become fans of Luther, defends him and go berserk. To settle the matter once and for all, the judge orders Luther and the jury to reconvene at the Simmons house just before midnight so all can witness the events that Luther witnessed. The group arrives to discover a mob of townspeople waiting. To ensure that the event does not turn into a circus, the judge orders only he, the jury, Luther and his girlfriend will be allowed to enter the house. The paper's janitor, Mr. Kelsey, tries to sneak in but is stopped. That night, Luther repeats his steps for the jury and begins by throwing a book at the bookshelf. However, Luther is unable to get the secret passage to open, and none of the supernatural events that previously occurred repeat themselves. Everyone becomes disappointed in Luther and now believes he has made up the whole story. Feeling ridiculed, Luther leaves and begins to walk home, but as everyone else leaves, Elma stays behind to try to find the trigger to the secret passage. But soon after, Luther hears the organ music playing again, and he rushes back to the house, only to find Mr. Kelsey playing the organ. Kelsey confesses to Luther that he is the one that produced all the supernatural effects that night because he wanted to expose the true cause and nature of the Simmons death. But unfortunately, he was unable to get into the house before he and the jury arrived. At this point, we hear a scream coming from the secret passage. Luther and Kelsey run to the passage to discover that Nicholas has taken Elma hostage. It is at this point we discover that Nicholas is the true murderer. Nicholas used Kelsey's pruning shears in the murder and then pushed Mr. Simmons out the window. He used Kelsey's shears in an attempt to frame him for the murder. Nicholas then used the secret passage to flee the scene of the crime without being noticed. The plan to tear down the mansion was all a ploy to destroy the evidence. Luther rescues Elma by ramming Nicholas with his whole body from behind. This knocks Nicholas over and they escape. Nicholas is then arrested and Kelsey reports the whole story to the authorities. This not only exonerates Luther but brings closure to the 20-year-old mystery. We are then all witness to Luther and Elma's marriage ceremony, but as the ceremony comes to an end, the organ begins to play. Everyone, including Kelsey, turns to see the organ's keys moving on their own, suggesting all along there truly is a ghost. So I love this movie. I highly recommend it. It's great for families. It's great for kids. This was one of my favorites as a kid and continues to be one of my favorites as adults. We watch it every Halloween, and I'd love to see you all enjoy it as well. But let's get into life hacks and success tips. But before we do, I got to give my disclaimer. This is for general purposes only. It's not intended to diagnose or treat anyone's condition. Speak to your healthcare provider. Only you and your healthcare provider could determine the best course of action for you. Number 1, face your fears. It's always best to take things head on. Do not ignore them. Do not try to escape them. Face them head on. Luther is scared of everything, but he agrees to spend a night in a haunted house to prove himself. The lesson here is step out of your comfort zone. This can be daunting, but it is necessary for growth. You don't have to face everything at once, but taking on challenges little by little can build your confidence, and surely it will. 2, seek a strong, significant other. There's a saying that behind every great man is a great woman. Luther would not have done this if he wouldn't have been prompted by Elma. Many strong and successful men would not have made it without the support of their significant others. A couple famous ones here is Lily and Disney. Walt wanted to call Mickey Mortimer. Lillian thought that was a ridiculous idea and came up with the name Mickey. Also consider all those hours away at the studio and the park. Lillian put up with all that, so Walt wouldn't have been able to get where he was without her. It's also interesting to note that Mortimer actually became the name of a Weasley anti-Mickey character in the cartoons. He's often portrayed as a scam artist, and very interesting, if you look at Mortimer, he kind of looks like Walt. So it's always been said that Mickey was part of Walt's personality. I think Mortimer was the unwanted parts of Walt's personality. Jackie Kennedy, it suggested that she perfected the Kennedy image, and this is what helped and led Jack to the presidency. Mileva Merrick, she was the first wife of Einstein. It suggested that she checked much of his work and may have led much of the groundwork for his most famous and successful breakthroughs. Edith Wilson, who was the first lady of President Woodrow Wilson. After Woodrow Wilson had a stroke and became bedridden, she took over many of the daily duties and details of the executive branch of government. In short, it's been suggested that she most likely acted as the first female president of the United States. 3. Persistence pays off. Luther's dream of being a reporter, even though Luther isn't taken seriously by his peers, he doesn't give up his ambitions. The lesson here is if you believe in something, stick with it, even when others doubt you. Persistence will lead to unexpected opportunities. And look, I can't speak enough about that. Almost every one of my videos that comes up, and I continue to believe the persistence is the number one predictor and driver of success. 4. Embrace your quirks and uniqueness. Luther's quirky, awkward, often a little out of place, but his personality endears him to others. The lesson here is don't try to be someone you're not. Authenticity can be your best asset, even if it means embracing your quirks. And again, my last video, I talk about learning how to have done that myself. 5. You don't have to be perfect. Luther stumbles, he makes mistakes, but he ultimately manages to reveal the truth behind the mystery. Lesson here is perfectionism can hold you back. It's okay to make mistakes along the way as long as you keep moving forward. And remember that mistakes are just lessons along the path to success. 6. Just as Scooby-Doo has taught us all along, the only true monsters are humans. And 7, the value of community. Support from friends. Despite the jokes and disbelief, Luther has friends who eventually support him. The lesson here is a strong community or support network can help you through difficult times. Don't be afraid to lean on others when needed. I can't speak about this one enough either. We know that strong family ties, whether those family members be blood relatives or the family members that we choose, our friends, truly are the support that helps us stay out of depression, to stay motivated, to prevent horrible things like suicide, and also substance use disorder. Rachel Wurzman did a TED Talk in 2017, and I'll leave the link below. But she suggests that social isolation contributes to relapse and overdoses and points out how meaningful human connection can lead to recovery and a better solution. And I believe this is why we have largely moved to the harm reduction model. The idea here is that what it all boils down to is that people ultimately will recover, but we just have to give them time to do it. And they need to do that when they are ready. So the key here is keeping them alive long enough until they get to the point that they want to recover. And they will. We just have to help them there. So these lessons wrapped in humor and charm can serve as a reminder that even in the face of fear and self-doubt, a little courage can go a long way. So I wanted to add some trivia to today. The plot for the film came from Andy Griffith. Don Knotts wanted to spin off his career into a feature film. So he asked Andy for suggestions, and Andy suggested that they take inspiration from an episode of the Andy Griffith Show that also involved a haunted house and many of the features that occurred in this film. Andy Griffith also suggested the running gag Attaboy. Attaboy is heard like 16 to 17 times through the film, and it even sparked a whole kind of social thing where everybody was running around saying "attaboy," and it's featured in several other films. Um, the use of the cleanser Banami is also one of the other running jokes. This is mentioned multiple times through the film. The director, writer, and many of the actors seen in this film also worked on the Andy Griffith Show. The house in the film sits right next to the Monsters house on the Universal backlot. This part of the backlot has been used for many films and TVs, including Back to the Future, The Twilight Zone, and some recent features as well. Um, the house is not the same house featured in Psycho. A lot of people believe that is true because the style is very similar, but it is not the same house. Matter of fact, they're not even close to each other on the backlot. Well, that's it for today, folks. Please like and subscribe, share with your friends, comment below your thoughts. Let me know what you're struggling with and if there's anything I can help with. And if there's any films you would like me to review, I would love to do that for you. So join me next week. Pleasant nightmares. I hope the bed bugs do bite, and be well.